Well folks, it's that time of the year where I talk about another Shin Megami Tensei game. A couple of months ago I made a video about Shin Megami Tensei IV and how much I loved it. For the technical limitations that game had to deal with, it still managed to be a very enjoyable experience. From a great soundtrack to the bleak set pieces and all the demon variety. And then of course I heard there was something called Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse. And well, I had questions. It didn't take long for me to know that it's not exactly the usual Atlas deal of them just re-releasing a game with a couple of new stuff added to it, but rather it actually is supposed to be a completely new story, something of a sequel to the original SMT IV. That had me sorta intrigued to see what they were gonna do with the setting that they had established. And so, almost immediately after beating 4, I jumped into Apocalypse. And yes, that does mean that I intended for this video to come out not long after the SMT IV video, but life gets in the way sometimes and all that, and please stop looking at me and judging me like that. There will be story spoilers in this, so if you want to play the game for yourself and you don't want that to be ruined for you, it might be best to watch this later. You have been warned. The game kicks off in what you assume to be the middle of SMT IV, or not long after it, where the canon ending is apparently the neutral one, in which Flynn doesn't side with any demon, but rather with the people of Tokyo, helping them survive and being the people's champion. And they don't waste any time in telling you about how he really is Tokyo's hero now, and how everyone looks up to him. So this was kind of cool to see coming from SMT IV. You play as Nanashi, a teenager who happens to be a survivor in Tokyo, and with him is Asahi, his childhood friend. And they're both being looked after by kind caretakers by the names of Nikari and Manabu. Asahi's father is also around and he manages a bar in a shelter. I'm gonna be real, this game has what may be my favorite prologue segment out of all the SMT games I've played so far, because it is absolutely brutal. And for reference, that's not a long list yet, but I'm looking to expand it. So far I've played SMT V Vengeance, 4 and 3, though I haven't finished 3 yet and I really want to. I'm already eyeing Strange Journey, Soul Hackers, and Digital Devil Saga, so hopefully I'll get videos done on those too at some point. But back to Apocalypse. The protagonist and his childhood friend are only like 15, and they get to witness a brother figure and a father figure be tortured to death before the demons turn their attention to them. Unfortunately, next up is Nanashi, and even he's not spared, with Asahi having to witness every last second. This was a pretty damn promising start, and by promising, I mean bleak as hell. I love it. Right after this, we're thrown into an area with a lot of other wandering souls who've also died. And at the end of this area, we're met with Dagda, one of the many deities in this universe. And he breaks the bad news to you. You're dead, and your friend Asahi is soon joining you. But you can go back to life under the condition that you sign a proverbial pact with him. You give him your name, which is how they implement the naming system in this game, and boom, you're now Dagda's tool. It actually sounds worse than it ends up being, but we may get to that later. So you really do end up going back to where you died, and you see Asahi being ambushed by the same demons before you step in and fend them off. And from there, the game basically kicks off with the goal of helping the protagonist of the previous game in his goal to make Tokyo a better place. At least as good as it can be in a very hopeless setting. I'm not going to be going through every story beat, but I will talk about some notable ones or general thoughts about certain parts that stood out to me. It wasn't immediately clear at first, but throughout the game you will gather human allies, and sometimes they'll be in and out multiple times. And this idea of gathering allies initially made me worry it may lean too much into the power of friendship trope, but to my surprise, this game pulled it off beautifully. There wasn't really any point where it felt like it was becoming overbearing, and in fact I don't think there's a party member that had a particularly bad arc. Gaston in particular I thought I would hate, since he starts off very arrogant, and I actually thought he would become some kind of comic relief for the group, but he ended up having one of the better character development arcs in the whole game, and I'm still in disbelief over that fact. In fact, pretty much all the characters have really nice interactions with each other, and at multiple points some of them are not at the same wavelength, but it builds up to that point eventually. You'll see them argue and even fight at times, but they come around to each other and start to tolerate one another, and before long they just have this mutual respect for one another. This game's execution of all this in a single game in a manner that was, in my opinion, as well done as it was, is nothing short of amazing. I personally got the Bonds ending, as cliche as that may be, but I just found myself liking all the side characters so much that I would have hated to get any other route, honestly. Maybe the one character that I sort of found the weakest writing-wise is Navarre, but even then I don't hate him. He just just kind of stands out as this goofy green fairy that's the group's main comic relief, and even then he has his moments. And imagine my surprise upon finding out that he's Rean Schwarzer from Trails. Bruh. And speaking of others, it was nice seeing Isabeau get a lot more screen time and dialogue in this game. So far I've only gotten the Chaos ending in 4, and I think I heard that she has more going for her in the neutral ending in that game, but I've yet to do that one so far. Just seeing Flynn and Isabeau from an outsider's point of view was pretty refreshing here. One thing I like about Apocalypse is just how much more character-driven it is compared to SMT IV, and that's not to say 4's narrative was inferior, rather that it relied on a different kind of storytelling, the environmental type, whereas with Apocalypse it just had so much more dialogue and chemistry between its characters. The environmental storytelling in 4 was beautifully done, but I wanted to throw it out there that I really enjoyed Apocalypse's approach as well. Though I will say that when playing 4, a couple of things seemed a bit odd to me, like how Walter didn't seem like a full-on Chaos representative. He just seemed like a guy who had questions about the way things worked on the opposite end, but then he got this artwork where he's doing a full-on evil edgelord pose like he's the baddest dude around. Not a dig, just a funny thing. And speaking of the characters, the way they implemented them in combat with all-out attacks was a really neat addition because it made them feel more present during your travels compared to having Walter do Agi on Minotaur. You have a nice variety with the support characters, and they each fulfill a unique role, like how Navarre is primarily a buffer or how Gaston is a melee attacker. Toki's insta-kills came in really handy at times too. And again, I just really like how they all do different things. Retreading some of the same areas as SMT IV wasn't a deal breaker for me, as I'm very familiar with the franchise that reuses assets for breakfast. And this game, once again, wasn't just a re-release of 4 with a few added elements, but rather a whole new story, so it was more than fine for me. I really like some of the quality of life additions that they added, like how the overworld feels wider and easier to navigate, or how there's finally more than 2 save slots, even though I'd like to have more than 5, which is the amount that Apocalypse has. There's a small thing that Apocalypse enhances that I'm grateful for. So both SMT IV and Apocalypse have the up and down buttons that allow you to look, well, up and down. And this may sound awkward, but the intention for it is to have you look at areas that you can either ascend or descend. In 4, you had to specifically use the up or down arrows and then the confirm button. But in Apocalypse, you can just use the confirm button and it will automatically look either up or down depending on what you're looking at, and then press it again to proceed. This is such a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but I appreciate that they thought about it. And how could I forget? I gave a shout out to the lovely Tokyo theme in SMT IV, and I find myself wanting to do the same here, because Apocalypse's Tokyo theme does not disappoint. Forest Tokyo theme was beautiful in a solitary sort of way. Apocalypse has a slightly more upbeat ring to it that fits the cast of characters without being overly upbeat. And I don't know, man, there's just something special about the way it sounds. I love it. I wasn't sure how many story stuff I wanted to bring up, but I did give a spoiler warning at the beginning. Still, what I'm about to talk about is probably one of the better parts about Apocalypse for me. So just another warning in case you are watching this video without having played the game, but you do have an interest. But if you don't care, well, that works too. So, a lot of you probably know, it's hard not to talk about Apocalypse and not bring up the fake Flynn twist. Oh my god, the reveal of that was one of the best examples of Uncanny Valley I've seen. Something straight out of media like Courage the Cowardly Dog, with a complete visual shift from 2D sprites to this horrendous, surreal, semi-realistic image of just whatever the hell this is. And the scene that it accompanied with him poisoning the survivors at this small celebration and then proceeding to absolutely demolish Asahi. Goddamn, man, if I wasn't hooked already, which I was, then this would be the point where I'd be locked in. The story just managed to impress me again and again, and I found myself loving this game more and more. I wanted to touch on something that I mentioned briefly earlier, but it is funny how despite becoming a tool of Dagda's, you're not really forced to do much by him. Some may see this as odd, but it came off as him being a bleeding heart despite being an edgy boy in front of his mother, Danu. I actually sorta like that aspect about him. I know you end up fighting him later because you're not doing things his way, but even then, I can't really hate him. Moving away from the story a little bit, I'd like to thank the developers of this game for getting rid of the horrendous way of fighting the fiends, because in case you aren't aware, in SMT IV, finding the fiends was incredibly RNG heavy. So they spawned in specific locations to my understanding, and the chances of them spawning there are 1 in 256. That's the kind of system that might as well be a huge middle finger to the player. In Apocalypse, you have this dungeon called Twisted Tokyo that has a whole bunch of floors to it. And every specific amount of floors, you'll find one of the fiends waiting for you at the end. You don't have to do a copious amount of math, guesswork, and save scumming. It's very clear-cut. One of the few things I didn't like about this game was how skill expansions this time around are level-gated. In SMT IV, you could get more simply through the Burrows upgrade list. With Apocalypse, I found myself kinda wanting to rush leveling up just so I can truly get to building my party without restrictions. But the even bigger problem was the final dungeon of this game. Seriously, what the f was that? It looks so visually off-putting, and navigating that place as someone who likes to make sure to collect everything was just not fun. That was the kind of dungeon that you need to look up a map for, and even then I was honestly not feeling it. I just wanted to be done with it. Thankfully, the final boss made up for it because it was just cinema. Those two things are about the only downsides that come to mind right now, because otherwise I had an amazing time with this game, way better than I expected to. I also booted up SMT V Vengeance after beating this game, and it's just insane how much weaker I felt in that game compared to Apocalypse. And I'm talking about New Game Plus saves for both. I'm not sure about the other paths, but in the Bonds ending, Nanashi gets Awakened Power, a passive skill that gives you Pierce in every damn element in the game, which is just unimaginably broken. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe neither SMT IV nor 5 have something like that. The fact that you have so much power occupied in just one skill slot is crazy. You could pair it with literally any attack skill and you'd enjoy that free Pierce. Moving on, like with SMT IV, I'm hoping to see the other endings in this game, but I still have a lot of SMT to catch up on, so there's a good chance that won't happen for quite some time. I'm hoping to get back to SMT III because goddamn, I left that game for long enough, but we'll see how that goes. That'll be it for this video. Don't want to make it too long, but I hope it conveyed my thoughts and feelings regarding Shin Megami Tensei IV Apocalypse. Another amazing SMT game that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm hoping to keep knocking down more of them. Thank you so much for watching this video. Just watching means a lot to me, and I wanted to let you know that I appreciate that, so thank you. You guys take care now, and I'll see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Bye-bye now.